Cold wind cut through the cobbled streets of Briarwood's Arts District. The late afternoon light slanted against the glass facade of the Avalon Arts Conservatory, where the city's elite often gathered to celebrate what they called high art. On the building's top floor, Clarissa Dalton, director and self-proclaimed guardian of standards, stood before a towering window, sipping an expensive glass of white wine. Her eyes gleamed with disdain as she looked down at the square below. A young black girl, around 16, in a worn-out practice outfit and tightly tied curly hair, was dancing. It wasn't loud street-style dancing. These were precise ballet movements, graceful, fluid, and strangely filled with sorrow. Amaya Collins, a name no one knew, yet each of her steps drew eyes from the crowd. Passers-by stopped. Strangers dropped coins into a tattered hat placed before her, but the people inside the building didn't see art. All they saw was a nuisance. Clarissa frowned, setting her wineglass down on a mirrored table. Another filthy stray twirling around outside the conservatory. Her voice was ice. Trevor Lang, her personal assistant, quickly nodded and reached for his phone to call security. But Clarissa wasn't finished. Get rid of her. Now I won't have that thing tarnish Avalon's image. We have a gala tonight. And I won't let some street performer scare off our donors. Down below, Amaya kept dancing, as if nothing else in the world existed. She didn't see Clarissa, but Clarissa saw her, and in her eyes a flawless dance from an unknown girl wasn't talent. It was an insult. 3 men in black security uniforms began moving toward the main entrance. The wind still blew, and the light fell on Amaya, as if the universe itself had chosen to spotlight a performance that the powerful were about to try and silence. If you've ever seen talent dismissed because of background, or wondered if an unknown girl could shake an entire gated world, then this story is for you. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the journey of Amaya Collins, a girl who started on the sidewalk but would make the entire art world look at itself differently. Heavy footsteps echoed across the marble steps. 3 men in black uniforms stepped out of the Avalon Arts Conservatory as if preparing to neutralize a national security threat. Under the slanting afternoon sun, Amaya Collins was still spinning through a complex series of pirouettes, despite the hard pavement and the worn-down soles of her shoes. But she wasn't dancing for money. She danced for pain, for the memory of her mother, and for something else that no one but her truly understood. "Hey, that's enough!" The gruff voice of one of the guards shattered the air. Amaya stopped, breathing softly. She turned to face them, without lowering her head, without backing away. "I'm standing on the sidewalk. This is a public space." The biggest of the 3 cracked a crooked smile. "Sidewalk's not meant for circus acts like this." Then, to assert his authority, he kicked hard at the ragged cloth hat on the ground, the one holding a few coins and crumpled bills from passers-by. Money scattered. A lone coin rolled all the way to Clarissa's feet on the marble steps. But she merely glanced at it, then turned away, as if picking it up would soil the sleeve of her Versace coat. Amaya knelt and gathered each coin, her hands trembling but her back straight. No one said a word, but the air was stretched tight, like a violin string on the verge of snapping. Once she'd collected every coin, she stood. Looking directly into the eyes of the guard who had struck out, she said calmly, "One day, you'll wish you had acted differently." In her eyes at that moment, there was no loud fury, only something that made all 3 men instinctively pause. A warning, a bad omen, or simply a quiet, unshakable belief in what was coming. Across the street, a sleek black Mercedes had just pulled up. Inside, a boy with frail legs pressed his face to the glass, staring without blinking. Beside him, his father turned and asked, "You want to get out?" The boy nodded. The Mercedes slowly pulled up to the curb across from the square. Inside the car, 12-year-old Noah Granger, his body thin and fragile from cerebral palsy, was glued to the scene outside. He didn't blink, didn't speak. He simply placed his trembling hand on the window as if trying to reach out to the girl standing in the middle of the street. Elliot Granger, his father, a powerful real estate magnate, used to a world of contracts and control, followed his son's gaze. And for the first time, he too saw Amaya Collins. not just as a wandering girl, but as an image that struck directly at his heart, strange, aching, a child trying to hold her dignity after being humiliated in public, a pair of eyes, uncannily like those of his late wife, Celeste, whenever she danced. "Dad," Noah whispered, "she looks like the angel from the fairy tale Mom used to tell me." Elliot frowned slightly. "That girl?" Noah nodded. His eyes never left Amaya. Outside, Amaya bent down to pick up her torn hat, but as she rose, her eyes unexpectedly met Noah's through the car window. Time seemed to freeze. No words, no clear understanding, but both felt something deep, like two souls forgotten by the world had found each other in a sea of indifference. Elliot looked at his son and saw for the first time in months that Noah wasn't sad or withdrawn. He was radiant, alive, and most importantly, he was feeling something. "Dad, can we stay a bit longer?" Elliot glanced at his watch. He had a major appointment, but for the first time, he nodded. For a reason he couldn't explain. Across the street, Amaya turned away, slinging an old backpack over her shoulder. But before walking off, she quietly looked back once more. That gaze, still calm but never resigned. Amaya walked on, each step steady as if nothing had just happened. But inside her jacket pocket, her hand was clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. She didn't look back again. But across the street, from inside the car, Noah still watched, unable to tear his eyes away. Elliot glanced at his son. The boy, still frail, still bound to his wheelchair, now had something unusual in his eyes. A light Elliot thought had been lost forever since Celeste died. "What do you see in that girl, Noah?" "I see someone like me." Elliot blinked. "Like you. Someone who's looked at with pity, like they're not supposed to be there." A long silence filled the car. Out on the street, Amaya passed an old bus stop. No one noticed her, just like every other day. But Noah couldn't look away. He saw what grown-ups didn't: loneliness hidden in her upright posture, hurt masked beneath every disciplined step. Amaya didn't know the car behind her was still there, but suddenly she turned, as if someone had called her not with words, but with feeling, and for the second time her eyes met Noah's through the glass. No words, no voices, just two people misdefined by the world, recognizing one another. A girl rejected for being poor and black, a boy left behind because his legs couldn't run. Neither of them allowed through doors labeled elite. But in that moment, something was planted. A belief, or the quiet beginning of a shift in power. Even after Amaya's figure disappeared around the corner, the Mercedes still hadn't moved. Inside the car, Noah sat quietly, but his eyes stayed fixed on the place where the girl had vanished, as if he feared that if he blinked, she would be lost forever. "Dad," he murmured, "she's not like the others." Elliot looked at his son through the rearview mirror, but said nothing. Partly because he didn't yet understand his son's feelings, and partly because he too sensed something unusual. On the other side of the city, Amaya stopped in a dim alleyway, where the streetlights flickered faintly and the concrete walls bore the stains of time. She leaned against a wall and pulled a smartphone from her jacket pocket, far too new and pristine to belong to someone homeless. The screen lit up. A blinking icon appeared, shadow frame, encrypted channel ready. A drafted message unsent. "That's enough. Initiate the file drop." Her finger hovered above the send button, then stopped. She stared at the screen for a long moment. It wasn't hesitation in her eyes, it was tactical calculation. Silently, she deleted the message, locked the phone, and slipped it back into her pocket. "Not yet," Amaya whispered, as if speaking to herself, or perhaps to someone she remembered. That night, in the quiet Granger estate on the north side of Briarwood, Noah couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed, clutching a crumpled drawing of a girl spinning in the wind. The next morning, as Elliot was getting ready for a meeting, Noah suddenly spoke. "Dad, I want to find her again. I don't know why, but I need to see her." Elliot paused, setting down his briefcase. Something in his son's eyes made him stop. A spark, a reason to keep going. "All right, we'll look for her." 2 hours later, the Mercedes cruised through each street in the city center. Noah pressed his face against the window. Trevor Lang, Elliot's assistant, drove, grumbling, "Mr. Granger, this is absurd. We don't even know who she is, where she's from." "I don't care where she's from," Elliot cut in. "I care about why my son wants to smile again." And as they turned onto the third square, Elliot suddenly hit the brakes. There, at the edge of a small park beneath falling leaves, Amaya was dancing, again. The Mercedes came to a stop by the edge of the small park, where golden leaves had gathered around the feet of a dancing girl. Noah Granger nearly jumped out of his wheelchair. "Dad, it's her. It's really her." Amaya Collins was still spinning under the late afternoon sun, unaware she was being watched, until a warm voice called from behind, "Excuse me, do you have a moment?" Amaya turned. Standing before her was Elliot Granger, dressed simply but with quiet elegance, and beside him Noah, his smile beaming like the sun had just switched on. "You're the girl who danced the other day. My son hasn't stopped talking about you." Amaya instinctively stepped back, wary, but Elliot's eyes didn't carry the command of those who'd once ordered her away. They held something rare in her world, sincerity. I don't take money from strangers," she said softly. "It's not money," Elliot smiled. "It's an invitation. To dinner at our home. We'd simply like to see you dance again, and this time, for an audience that wants to be there." The Granger estate sat nestled in a quiet suburb surrounded by trees and warm lights. Amaya hesitated as she stepped through the wrought iron gate. This was the first time she'd entered someone's home as a guest. At the dining table, Noah couldn't hide his joy. He told Amaya about his mother, Celeste, who used to say that dancing could make time stop. The dinner was simple, yet somehow it was the best Amaya had eaten in months. Afterwards, as the sun dipped behind the oaks, Noah turned to her. "Would you dance?" Amaya nodded gently. No music, no stage, just the wind, garden lights, and a little faith. She began with a fluid motion, spinning like a leaf caught in a breeze. Each step a thread of memory, of her mother, of cold nights, of scornful glares on the street, and of the innocent eyes now watching her. But she wasn't dancing alone. She moved closer to Noah, held out her hand and smiled. "Want to try, little warrior?" Noah hesitated, then slowly placed his trembling hand into hers. Amaya moved gently, guiding him in a circle, his wheelchair spinning to the rhythm like a quiet waltz. Each motion seemed to melt time itself. Elliot stood there, speechless. He wasn't watching a dance, he was watching a son come alive, and a girl ignite something no doctor had ever reached, hope. "I used to think only therapy could help him," Elliot whispered. "But maybe art goes deeper." After the dance, no one spoke for several minutes. Noah sat quietly, his face glowing as if lit from within. He turned to Amaya. "Where did you learn to dance? Who taught you?" Amaya was silent for a moment. She looked up at the branches swaying in the breeze, as if the past was rustling back through the leaves. "My mother," she said, voice soft but clear. "Her name was Celeste Collins. She was the best dancer I've ever known. She didn't learn in a park. She once had a scholarship at Avalon Arts Conservatory." Elliot raised an eyebrow slightly. "Really? Avalon?" Amaya nodded, but her eyes gradually dimmed. "When they found out she was pregnant, they revoked the scholarship. She cried for a week. I still remember her scrubbing tiles in the restroom of a diner just to make rent." Noah blinked. Elliot sat in still silence. Amaya continued. "The person who revoked it was an assistant director at the time. Her name was Clarissa Dalton." The name dropped like a stone into the room. Elliot tightened his grip on his teacup, while Noah whispered, "She's the one who chased you from the square." Amaya nodded. "She destroyed my mother, and now she wants to destroy me." She gave a small, bitter smile, but in her eyes there was no rage. There was something else. The calm of someone who has accepted their scars and is sharpening them into blades. "My mother died when I was 13. She carried one question her whole life. Was I not good enough? Or was I just not allowed to make mistakes because I was black?" Elliot didn't speak. But his gaze shifted. He no longer saw Amaya as a homeless girl. He saw her as the heir to a stolen dream. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Clarissa Dalton sat in her office on the top floor of Avalon. Before her lay piles of paperwork, scholarship applications, rejection files. She signed each one, coldly, mechanically, like a machine designed to filter out the unworthy. "Maintaining standards isn't prejudice," she muttered. "It's preserving reputation." She had no idea. Each mark of ink she placed was becoming evidence. Night had fallen at the Avalon Arts Conservatory. Clarissa Dalton sat in her oak-paneled office, the soft glow of her desk lamp casting light onto a large portrait hanging in the center of the room. Clarissa in an evening gown, holding a microphone, declaring the opening of the National Arts Festival. Her eyes in the painting were full of ambition. Her eyes in real life, cold, calculating, and slightly anxious. "Is the facial recognition system set up yet?" "All done, ma'am. The system will alert us if that girl comes within 200 meters of the center." "Good. I don't want any second chances disrupting our environment." Clarissa set down her teacup and began signing another stack of scholarship rejections, this time for an outstanding Asian boy. Reason: does not fully meet cultural harmony criteria. Elsewhere in the city, Amaya Collins sat in a nameless coffee shop, one earbud in, her eyes locked on her phone screen. Across the screen scrolled a coded message: "Shadow frame active, streamline secured." A deep male voice came through her earpiece: "Send the files. We're ready to publish the full dossier on Clarissa. Emails, audio recordings, bank accounts, diversity fund embezzlement." Amaya didn't respond. She kept staring at the screen. In the dim light of the cafe, her face no longer looked like that of a wandering girl. It was the face of a strategist. 3 years of drifting weren't for survival, they were for surveillance. She had cleaned up after former Avalon instructors. She had slipped into Avalon's workshops, recording hallway conversations. She had stayed just close enough to be forgotten. And because of that, she heard things people never said on camera. Now she held a trove of data, collected alongside the Shadowframe Collective, a covert hacker network that exposed those sitting on thrones of hypocrisy. "I don't need to release everything," Amaya said quietly. "I want her to step into her own trap. All I need is a few more public missteps." Meanwhile, Clarissa was giving an interview to a local media outlet, wearing her polished smile. "We always welcome talent, but true art must come with character and the right temperament. Not everyone is ready for the spotlight." Behind the camera, a young technician stared at her, silently wondering, "So, does the spotlight have a skin color?" The war hadn't begun, but the pieces were already in motion. One woman used cameras to control, another used truth to dismantle the system. And in that world, silence was the most terrifying weapon of all. Morning sunlight spilled into the Granger Estate's living room. On the polished tile floor, Noah was practicing standing. No doctors, no nurses, just Amaya. She didn't bark commands. She didn't force him to try. She simply played music and opened her arms. You don't have to go far. You just have to know that you can move forward. Noah pressed his lips together. His hands gripped the support rail on his wheelchair. One step, then two. And then he stood, his body tipped forward. And Amaya caught him, light as air. "I did it," Noah gasped. "Number we did it," Amaya smiled. From across the room, Elliot watched. Emotion rose in his chest, but he didn't interrupt. He knew this wasn't just physical recovery. This was the beginning of something much bigger. After the session, Amaya pulled a neatly clipped black folder from her backpack. She placed it on the dining table and slid it toward Elliot. "You once asked me why I'm always so calm. This is why." Elliot opened the folder. Inside were copies of Clarissa Dalton's correspondence from 2007 to the present, financial receipts showing evidence of scholarship fund embezzlement, screenshots of Clarissa's emails to colleagues, laced with veiled racial language, internal recordings. "Art isn't community relief. We train artists, not social projects." He looked up, stunned. "How did you get all of this?" Amaya simply shrugged. People forget the servers at the party have ears. The janitors see what gets thrown away. And me, I know how to collect it all. Elliot looked at her, not as the stray girl he had once invited into his home, but as a strategist, someone who turned pain into evidence. That night in his room, Noah lay in bed, his nightlight glowing. He stared at the ceiling and whispered, "She didn't just help me walk. She's getting ready to change the whole world." Elliot walked over and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "And we will stand beside her." At that same moment, in a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the Avalon Center, Amaya sent one simple message. "Begin line 1, lock." Gala night is the deadline. Her screen lit up with a response. "Shadow Frame Collective. Confirmed. Standing by." The Avalon Arts Conservatory shimmered like a fairy tale palace. A red carpet stretched from the front gates to the grand hall, where hundreds of guests, politicians, donors, artistic celebrities, wore finely tailored suits and glittering gowns. Champagne sparkled in crystal flutes. A string ensemble played a gentle nocturne. Laughter, clinking glasses, and silky small talk floated like pillows in the air. Clarissa Dalton descended from the grand staircase. Black gown adorned with gemstones. Flawless appearance, a masterful smile. She made her way toward the VIP cluster, shaking hands one by one, missing no important eye contact. "Tonight," she declared, "Avalon will rewrite history. We're about to announce the largest donation in the Academy's 50-year legacy." She believed she had won. Everything was under control. No one could take this stage from her now. Or at least, that's what she thought. At the back of the hall, Elliot Granger entered with his son, Noah dressed sharply, seated in a new wheelchair. No one questioned it. Who would refuse an invitation from a Granger, especially when he had just pledged a record-breaking donation? "Mr. Granger, are you tonight's guest of honor?" "Not yet, but I will be saying a few words," Elliot replied with a calm smile. In his inner jacket pocket sat a sleek black USB drive, no larger than a fingernail. And Noah, the boy who once rarely spoke, had memorized every word of what he was about to say. Meanwhile, behind the stage, in the shadows of the technical booth, Amaya Collins stood wearing a pure white gown, hair in a graceful bun, her face touched with subtle makeup. She looked nothing like the sidewalk dancer of days past. In fact, if Clarissa saw her now, she wouldn't recognize her. A shadow frame operative, disguised as a tech crew member, nodded at her. "Main projection system is prepped. All evidence is standing by, waiting for your signal." Amaya looked toward the stage, where Clarissa was preparing to raise her glass. She didn't tremble. She wasn't nervous. Only stillness remained, the kind of stillness found in someone who has been struck down once and now stands ready to end the game. 8 p.m., the spotlight bathed Clarissa in gold. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are living in an era where art must be defended more than ever." In the crowd, Elliot and Noah began moving slowly toward the front. Amaya stood just behind the velvet curtain, her hand resting on the lighting control panel. "We are proud to announce a historic gift from one of our most dedicated supporters." Clarissa turned to the left wing of the stage. "Please welcome Mr. Elliot Granger." Applause rose. Clarissa smiled triumphantly, but when Elliot stepped up to the podium, he wasn't holding a giant check. Instead, he placed a small USB drive onto the control console. And as the stage lights subtly shifted hue, Clarissa saw something strange in his eyes. Something was wrong. The stage lights swept across Elliot Granger's face as he stepped up to the microphone. Clarissa stood slightly behind him, arms gently crossed, her smile frozen like melted wax. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elliot began, his voice deep and steady, "before I speak about any donation, I'd like to tell you a story." The hall fell silent. Glasses stopped clinking. Cameramen moved in closer. "A few weeks ago, my son and I witnessed a young girl being humiliated right outside this very building. She wasn't begging. She wasn't causing trouble. She was simply dancing." Clarissa blinked, still composed, but her posture had stiffened. She was chased off, yelled at, her hard-earned coins kicked across the pavement. Because she didn't fit the image that some people here wanted to preserve. A ripple moved through the audience. Some began exchanging looks. Her name is Amaya Collins, and here's what makes the story even more heartbreaking. Elliot paused. He looked directly at Clarissa, then toward the massive LED screen behind him. She's the daughter of Celeste Collins, a brilliant dancer who once received a scholarship to Avalon, until she was expelled. Not for lack of talent, but because she was pregnant. And the person who signed that expulsion is your current director. The hall erupted in murmurs and gasps. Clarissa tried to stay composed, stepping forward. "Mr. Granger, I believe—" "I'm not finished," Elliot cut her off, not loudly, but firmly. He gestured. The house lights dimmed. The screen behind him lit up. The first image appeared. A letter dated 2007, titled "Scholarship Termination, Celeste Collins." Signed, Clarissa Dalton, Assistant Director. The letter read, "Pregnancy does not align with the excellence image this academy upholds." Clarissa went pale. "That was years ago. The policy has changed. Everything hasn't changed," Elliot replied, "because these are letters from just last year." The screen shifted again, this time showing a series of emails where Clarissa had rejected applications from high-achieving Black and Latino students, quoting reasons like, "does not meet cultural standards," "lacks the refined artistic temperament." Someone in the audience whispered, "Oh my God, how many children did she shut out?" Clarissa stepped back, her face unraveling. "You're defaming me. Those emails are doctored." Elliot didn't respond. Just then, Noah Granger rose from his seat. He wheeled himself toward the stage, spotlight following him like the quiet rhythm of a heroic overture. He took the microphone. "She taught me to dance. I was able to stand because of her, but she was thrown out of this place just because she's Black. So tell me, what else do we call this, if not injustice dressed in a ball gown?" The silence that followed wasn't silence. It was the sound of a structure collapsing, quietly, irreversibly. Clarissa staggered. She tried to speak, but by then, no one was listening anymore. Clarissa hadn't even finished speaking when the screen behind Elliot shifted to a new slide. A title appeared in stark white letters on a black background: "Discrimination, Embezzlement, Deceit. Investigative Documents, 2022 to 2024. Elliot stepped aside. A spotlight swept across the stage, illuminating Amaya Collins stepping out from the wings in her white gown. Each of her steps sliced through the air. No one spoke. No one stopped her. Clarissa stumbled backward, visibly shaken, trembling, her eyes wild with panic. On the screen, a financial ledger showing fund transfers from the Hope for Talent scholarship account, redirected into a secondary personal account under the name Clarissa Dalton. Total amount misappropriated, $537,000. Over 3 years, Mrs. Dalton used scholarship funds for luxury purchases, private stylists, and personal event hosting. Voiceover from the bank's investigative audit clip. The next slide, an internal recording. Clarissa speaking to an assistant in a secretly taped meeting. "I don't want this center becoming a haven for the rootless. Art is for those with pedigree. The rest, eliminate quietly." The entire hall froze. Some guests stood and left immediately. Others raised their phones and began filming the screen. A photographer from San Francisco Arts Review kept clicking his shutter, his hands visibly shaking. Amaya stepped up to the microphone, looking Clarissa dead in the eye. "You once told my mother, there's no place here for a pregnant dancer. Today I say to you, there is no place here for someone who wears a mask to teach art." Clarissa trembled, trying to salvage control. "This is fabricated. A smear campaign." From the third row, Trevor Lang, Elliot's longtime assistant, stood up and raised a notarized copy of the financial records. "Everything has been verified, including the clip gathered by Shadow Frame. Avalon's surveillance system was tampered with to hide data, but we've restored it." Clarissa screamed, "You're all killing me." "No, Mrs. Dalton," Amaya replied. "We're reclaiming what you destroyed. The dreams, the children you shut out, and the honor of the arts." At that moment, the gala music fell completely silent. A soft ding sounded from Clarissa's phone. She glanced at it. Account suspended. Funds frozen. Disciplinary board requests your resignation within 48 hours. Clarissa collapsed into the nearest chair. No one stood beside her, not a single person. On stage, Amaya turned to Elliot, who gave her a small, approving nod. This stage, at last, has been lit the right way. Clarissa still sat collapsed at the edge of the stage. The stage lights slowly dimmed, then lit up again. But this time, they didn't shine on her. They illuminated the grand doors at the back of the hall, where Amaya Collins now led a group of 10 children inside. They came from poor districts, from shelters, from community arts programs Avalon had refused to fund. A young Asian girl named Kai Nguyen, an international classical dance champion, rejected for being visually unsuitable for the stage. A Latino boy, Diego Navarro, who once performed flamenco for the mayor himself, denied a scholarship for lacking refinement. A brown-skinned girl, Lena Ortiz, top of the admissions list, but whose file had gone missing 3 separate times. One by one, they stepped onto the stage. Spotlights landed on each face. No one spoke. They simply stood beside Amaya, silent, proud. Amaya lifted the microphone for the first time, addressing the Hall of Power. 11 years ago, I asked my mother, "Why don't you go back to that center and prove them wrong?" She smiled and said, "Because art doesn't need to kneel to ask for permission to exist." And today I answer her, and all of you here, we're not here to ask for permission. We're here to lead. She turned to look at the students, then back toward the audience. Clarissa once said, "Avalon is not a charity camp." She was right. It will no longer be a camp of exclusion. It will become a place where art belongs to everyone, no matter the color of your skin, no matter how hard your name is to pronounce. If you know pain, you know art. If you know love, you deserve to dance. The first applause rang out, not from a VIP guest, but from a server standing in the wings, then from an elderly woman in the last row. Then the whole hall rose to its feet. The applause thundered, long, true, unprompted. Clarissa Dalton, left behind in darkness, while Amaya and the children once cast aside stood in the light, like new stars rising in an old sky. As the applause gradually faded, Elliot Granger stepped onto the stage once more. He didn't hold a microphone. He simply looked out over the hall and spoke clearly. "I'd like to announce a decision, not as a sponsor, but as a father." He looked toward Noah, sitting beside Amaya. "I saw my son rise from his wheelchair, not because of medicine, but because of a dance called Amaya Collins." He turned back to the audience. Avalon was once a symbol of art, but under Clarissa Dalton it became a fortress of exclusion. Today, I declare, the Avalon Arts Conservatory will be officially transformed into the Celeste Institute for Inclusive Arts. Named after Celeste Collins, a dancer who should have been the brightest star this place ever knew. A stir rippled through the audience, then fell quiet, giving way to another round of applause, this time from those who had stayed silent for too long. Elliot looked directly at Amaya. "And to ensure this place never repeats its old mistakes, we need someone with courage, with empathy, and with true talent to lead it forward. I am proud to officially invite Amaya Collins to become the youngest artistic director in this institution's history." The hall erupted. Applause exploded, mingled with the quiet sobs of parents whose children had once been denied admission. In the darkened back row, Clarissa stood shakily, only to be escorted out by 2 security staff. One of them was the same guard who had kicked Amaya's hat. He looked at her, nodded once, and bowed his head slightly. No apology was spoken aloud, but that glance was enough to close a loop. Amaya took the microphone. She looked out at the hall, lights catching the depth of her dark brown eyes. "I didn't come to reclaim anything. I came to return a place, to the dreams that were taken from it." 3 years later, on the clean white facade of a brand new sign, bold letters read, "Celeste Institute for Inclusive Arts, where every step is a voice." A yellow school bus pulled up in front of the newly opened branch in Detroit. Children poured out, laughing and chatting, carrying canvas bags printed with the Institute's logo. Today, the center operates in 12 cities, from New York and Chicago to Houston. Over 10,000 students from marginalized communities, people of color, immigrants, the disabled, once rejected elsewhere, are now performing on stages of their own. A short documentary played on screen, The Girl Who Danced the Wall Down. Art magazines called it the historic movement of a forgotten generation. In a dance class at the Oakland branch, Amaya guided a young deaf girl through a spinning foot movement. The girl stumbled. Amaya knelt, didn't lift her up, just smiled and nodded. The girl nodded back and stood up on her own. Behind them on the back wall hung a black and white photo. A black woman dancing ballet on an old train platform. Her hair tied back with a frayed cloth, her belly visibly pregnant. Below it a line engraved, Celeste Collins, who was never allowed into the classroom, but opened the door for thousands of others. During a nighttime exhibition, Amaya stood beside Elliot and Noah, all three watching silently as children performed under soft green lights. "Do you think Mom sees this?" Noah asked, hands clasped together. "No," Amaya answered, smiling gently, "because Mom is this place." On another wall, near the stage, sat a weathered brown hat encased in glass. Beneath it, a single inscription: "This is where every dance began." There are people who don't need to stand on stage, yet still make the entire stage shift in their direction. Amaya Collins didn't dance to perform. She danced to open doors. She danced to return a place to those once swept aside like dust on the sidewalk. And if you've ever felt that you weren't perfect enough to dream, remember this story. Art, like dignity, is not something granted by the powerful. It's something you already have. From the moment you decide not to give up your next step.